And Mr. Chairman, I think we've got everyone on. We're just waiting for one council member to join.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Mayor.
Hey, Mayor, how are you?
All right, Mr. Mayor.
Doing well. Thank you.
Good, good.
Madam Clerk, who are we waiting for?
I think we're waiting on Councilmember Waring. Has he signed on yet?
I haven't signed on, but I'm trying to do
Okay.
I just saw Councilman Waring and Councilman Shealy, so they're over in the council chambers.
Oh,
He's here.
I can hear you.
okay, well, why don't we get started? Okay. The April 13th, 2021 Committee on Ways and Means is now called to order. I will call on Council Member Del Chapo to give our invocation. Councilwoman Del Chapo.
Thank you. Let us pray. O God, from whom all power comes, by whose divine will all must abide, we thank you for our civil liberties and freedom, for our opportunities and our privileges. We beg of you to bless, assist, and enlighten us. May we prove worthy of the confidence placed in us by our fellow citizens. May we be just and upright in our thinking, honest in all our actions, and ever be guided by a true conscience in the legislation we propose or vote upon. Forgive us all our mistakes and selfish tendencies, and help prepare us by our good deeds for an eternal union with you. Through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Item number 2, approval of minutes.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Ayes have it. Bids and purchases.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Item 4, Parks Department approval.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 The ayes have it. Item number 5, Parks
Move
Department.
for approval.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 The ayes have it. Item 6, Office of Cultural
Move
Affairs.
for approval.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Item 7, Police
I have a
Department.
motion, Mr. Chairman, on item number 7.
Yes?
I think we can increase that from 50 to 85,000.
So you want to amend item number 7 to increase the amount from 50,000 to 85,000, am I correct?
Right. And I think
I'll
that.
second.
Is Amy available to explain why we can go to 85,000?
I am available, Councilmember.
Thank you.
There was some confusion because some of the part of the attorney leave program was reduced. And so that was a confusion for this contract, but the contract actually can be for the full amount, which is the $85,000.
Thank you.
It's more of a correction.
Yes.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could just, I reached out to Amy Barch, who's the director of attorney leave. I asked her to give me a quick update as to what is going on with her program. She is 100% of her graduates have retained their job for 30 days. 82% have retained their jobs for more than 180 days. And they have cut down recidivism rates by 2/3. This program has been exceptionally successful locally. It is so successful that she's making plans to expand in Columbia and expand into the upstate as well. So we were the incubator for this program back in 2015, and she's had continued success for the past 6 years. I just think that it was worthwhile for the council to be made aware of Amy's success with the Attorney Leave program and our support of that. I know that Chief Reynolds is on the line. I've talked to him about this program. He is fully behind it. And we can help and decrease the number of men who return back to prison is a huge benefit for our community and huge benefit to our criminal justice system.
Any more comments before I ask the question?
This is Councilman Waring. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think when the program first started, I think it was $80,000 5 years ago. I agree with Councilman Shahid on that.
Okay. Anything else? The motion is to approve item 7 as corrected, change from 50,000 to 85,000. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Item number 8.
Move for approval.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Moved
And
and,
Mr.
moved and properly seconded. Discussion, Councilwoman Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just thinking, you know, with this kind of a decision that it would be great to have on our record. What are the expected uses for this bond issue? You know, in general, not in any detail, but can someone speak to that, please?
Councilmember Jackson, this is Amy.
Yes.
So this will be to pay both MUSCF and the city of Charleston some of the infrastructure contributions we have given in the past, and the remaining funds will go towards phase 2 of the project itself.
Did that answer your question, Councilwoman Jackson?
Yes, in terms of the actual uses for this, I guess I would just leave a suggestion that maybe before we get too far into phase 2, that maybe we could have an update at one of our committee meetings, real estate or wherever it would make most sense.
Sure.
Duly noted. Any other discussion on this item?
Councilman Gregory.
Yes, Councilman Waring.
Right, can we get a breakdown of how much is going to go back to medical, how much is going to the city, and how much will be?
You're breaking up.
Can you speak a little closer to the
Yeah,
mic?
we can't hear you.
I can.
Now that's better.
Can we get a breakdown of how much is going to go back to medical use and how much is going towards the next? Ms. Wharton?
Yeah, so the MUSCF and the city of Charleston contribute 50% each. So each of us will be getting, there's 3 notes receivable from West End right now and of $5.6 million. So both of us will be getting that in return, MUSCF and also the city.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, discussions? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 The ayes have it. Item number 9, budget, finance, revenue.
Move for
collection.
approval.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? Councilwoman Jackson.
Thank you. I have the same question for this bond issuance. I do think it's important to put it on the record what the purpose of the bond, the proceeds will be used for.
So Councilmember Jackson, this is the affordable housing bond. So we will pay back the band that we got last June, and then the rest will go towards the projects that I believe Gianna has discussed with CD committee for the past year or so.
Yeah, thank you. I think that information is important to the public. It's for our affordable housing that we obligated in 2017. The voters had a good majority on a referendum, and now we're able to be putting all of this money to work. Thanks.
And I'll add that
Yes,
Well-
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Reiterate that this was the measure, as Councilmember Jackson just mentioned, that our citizens, our voters approved, and we have very wisely waited until really the money is all been planned and now needed. And coincidentally, we have the benefit of a very attractive interest rate at this time. So it really worked out well for our taxpayers as well in terms of the total costs of issuing these bonds. And did Amy mention what we feel the approximate interest rate would be? If not, I'd like for her to share that. It's not a done deal until they're bought and sold, but I think we have a range.
That's correct. So it'd be probably 2 and 2.5% interest rate for that. And then we have an indicative interest rate for the Horizon bond, which is at 1.97, I think.
1.97. Wow, that's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's great to get cheap money. Ready for the question? All in favor say aye.
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 The ayes have it on item number 9. Item 10,
Move for approval.
Second.
moved and properly moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Ayes have it. Item 11, Housing and Community Development
Move for
Improvement.
approval.
I'll second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion on item 11?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Councilman Shealy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wholeheartedly, support affordable housing and helping those who are less fortunate. However, one of the biggest issues we face, and can you hear me? Okay?
No, you're breaking up.
We can't hear you at all, quite frankly.
You're breaking up.
I might take this mask. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. I was saying, I heartily support affordable housing and helping those less fortunate. But however, one of the biggest issues we face in my area of the city is traffic gridlock on Ashley River Road and the surrounding areas. And if you don't live there, you really don't understand what I'm talking about. And if you did live there, I know you would feel, exactly the same way. And we have many city employees who live in that area, that face that situation twice a day at least, mostly trying to work every day. And, instead of attempting to correct a traffic problem that we have, by doing this, we're adding to that traffic problem, and we're adding to the roads that can't handle that traffic right now. And because of those increased, because of that increased traffic, we're seeing an increased number of accidents now in that area, and it's really become a dangerous area. So no doubt, Classic Development Properties, they're a very reputable company. They do outstanding work. We had awarded them $2 million. Their costs went up, and now they're requesting another $600,000, a 30% increase. And that's a lot of money for us to give up when we're negatively affecting the quality of life to the people in the district that I represent. So I just don't feel like it's fair to our constituents in that area. And I do think that money could have been spent more wisely somewhere else. So I just had to say that. Thank you.
In response, Councilman Shealy, have we had the traffic study yet?
I'm not sure. That's a good question of whether there's a traffic study that's been done for that property. I'm not sure.
Because if I recall, we've discussed this project prior.
Yeah.
And I thought that one of the things that we did discover that there was an additional egress from the site.
All right, now that
might have a positive effect on traffic flow.
Yes, sir. That's a different affordable housing unit that we're talking about on that one. This one's just a couple blocks down the road.
Okay.
So we continue to put things in the worst possible place, and that's kind of my point.
Okay. Any further discussion, Councilwoman Jackson?
Yeah, I just have a question. If for some reason we would vote this down to give the amended award of another 600,000. I mean, we've still obligated the 2 million, right? That doesn't go away. So basically, we would just be hamstringing a developer from finishing a project. Or does anybody know the answer to that?
Councilwoman Jackson, that is correct. And I would also remind council that this developer did request 2.9 million, but basically based on the request we had and the number of developments that we were trying to support, we awarded 2 million. So he did come back and request the additional 600,000. But in addition to the traffic challenges, we have housing challenges. And so I would remind us of the need for housing, especially in our West Ashley community, that requires the largest number of housing as we look at the data from the comprehensive plan that is being developed by our planning department. And so naturally, if city council does not approve this, they would have to find the money otherwise. Thank you.
Thanks. I intend to vote yes. I just wanted to make that point clear. Thanks.
Anything else for clarity?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Councilman Griffin.
Yes, sir. I think this is a pretty tough situation here because I totally agree with Councilmember Shealy, and I actually voted with him on the other affordable housing development, the only affordable housing development that I've ever voted against since I've been on council. And it's due to the fact that just because we have a need for housing, we have to be making sure that they're going into the right areas. And I understand West Ashley as a whole needs more affordable housing units. And I think that we've really thought outside of the box on that in a lot of ways. I'm excited for the potential of the Epic Center and the fact that that could create more affordable housing units than any project ever in the city. But this area, Highway 61, is oversaturated. There's really nothing we can do as a city to make traffic any better out there. And unfortunately, all that the residents out there are going to see are more units. They're not going to understand that this is to help affordable housing. They're just not going to get it. And it's not their fault that they don't. All they see are units going up in an area of high density and really little to no infrastructure improvements. So, you know, we just have to be very smart about where we develop in West Ashley. I love the affordable housing units that have come to Ashleyville and Maryville. I just think that, you know, I'm going to vote yes on this only because we've already appropriated the money and I don't want to pigeonhole the developer. But, you know, I think we've got to kind of take our focus away from trying to get more units down 61 in that corridor because there's just the infrastructure improvements. The people are looking at roads that haven't improved since the 1950s, since the Eisenhower administration. And it's just not going to get better anytime soon. So hopefully we can turn our efforts into areas that just make a little bit more sense. Thank you.
I mean, land affordability is an issue too, but any more?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Councilmember Shea.
Yeah, Giona, I hate to put you on the spot with this question, but do you have a count of the number of inventory we have in West Ashley for affordable housing?
No, sir, not off the top of my head. I know that Chloe from our planning department worked with a member of my team and they have a number that represents what is available in the West Ashley community. So I am glad to share that with council later on, but I don't know that right off the top. Yeah.
Again, I should have called you in advance and asked you that prior to this meeting. But if we can get that information sometime later, that would be fine. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. I'll be glad to share that. And I would also remind council that the developers working on this site have been looking at this site for the last 2+ years. So it wasn't decided on a whim. They have been looking at it and planning appropriately. But to the suggestions, planning staff and housing staff have also looked at and evaluated where it is best to develop in the city of Charleston. So we are taking all of those measures into account as we meet with developers and talk with developers about affordable housing, where the places are that are best suited for affordable housing. Thank you.
Councilman Shea, just for clarification, do you want the listing of affordable housing that is city-driven, or do you want all affordable housing West Ashley, including county, et cetera, et cetera?
I would like to have a full inventory of the number of units, and if she can break that down by city and non-city, that would be beneficial. I know that we've addressed this issue in our West Ashley Revitalization Commission meetings in the past, and I just want to make sure that we're continuing on the right path with this. There is obviously a huge explosion of residents coming into West Ashley. And it is critical that we maintain this balance of affordable housing all throughout West Ashley. That is part of this plan to maintain that. Some of this, of course, also deals with access to affordable transportation as well. And so while the comments about transportation are important to keep in mind, there's also availability to shopping areas, restaurants, grocery stores, and things of that nature as well. So it's not just a concern of just traffic, it's also a concern of accessibility, other things that we take for granted. And hopefully we get this Epic Center up and running and address a good number of those units for workforce housing and affordable housing as well. So there's a lot of potential out here in West Ashley. And I understand the concerns of my colleagues on this, and I hope that they will support this effort. And I think given a full picture is critical, Mr. Chairman, as you just mentioned. So thanks for that comment.
And some of the things that you just listed are a natural part of the site selection process. It's a part of what we call site and neighborhood standards. So a lot of what you're talking about, schools, grocery stores, transportation, blah, 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 all of that is a part of what Ms. Johnson's office does in terms of determining the suitability of sites.
Right.
Okay. Any more questions or discussions on this issue? If not,
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor. I don't have the full screen. Okay.
Thank you. And I don't have all the numbers on the top of my head, but I do recall from our housing analysis done for our comprehensive plan just recently that they not only ascertain the total number of affordable units per area of our city, but they also projected the number of affordable units needed citywide by 2030 to eliminate what they called a termed affordability gap. And in fact, West Ashley had the highest need, a projection of over 6,000 units needed by the year 2030 to meet current and future demand by that time, which was more than any other place in the city. So we can get all those statistics that came out of that study, but it clearly identified West Ashley as the place of greatest need for more affordability.
And Mayor, just to piggyback, in old school, we call that expected to reside. How many people do you anticipate will be moving into particular areas, neighborhoods, et cetera, and you draw your conclusions accordingly. Any more questions or issues on 11?
Councilmember Shealy has his hand up.
Councilman Shealy?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I don't disagree with you on the number of people moving in, and this having to have, affordable housing. I know how important it is, but as more people move along Ashley River Road, the problem's going to get worse. It's not going to get better. And I just think we have to do a better job of looking at traffic and what can be done about traffic before we help put more traffic on those roads, because it is a mess on Ashley River Road. So I just wanted to explain myself, because I am very much for affordable housing, but I'm not for the location of where this is right now because of the traffic situation. And that's my only reason, for being against.
Not a problem. I agree with you. The infrastructure should be in place, but a lot of times we can't get there. Any other issues, discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Councilman Waring.
I'm gonna vote for the measure, but Councilman Shealy and Griffin and those that live in that area have a legitimate complaint. What's going to be the action step? We know that the traffic is a problem, but what's the coordination we're getting with the state, city, the county to improve turn lanes, etc., going down Old 61. I think that should be the action step coming out of this. Even if the answer may be no now, but if we begin to ask for a better solution could be had. Just having a good, hearty conversation about traffic problems out there. We know there's some solutions coming down Glen McConnell, and those actions are proceeding forward. But on Old 61, there are a couple of places that if turn lanes were there, it would make traffic flow a little bit better. Right now, I don't see the effort where we're making in a coordinated way, again, with the county, the state, as well as the city, in particular on historic Ashley River Road.
I mean, that's a question for our Department of Transportation. I think they did do a transportation plan. And as a part of that plan, I'm not sure whether or not that issue was addressed.
That's something we can address, on the outside of this meeting. I think.
Okay, not a problem. Okay.
Thank you.
Any more questions, discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposes?
Nay.
One nay. The ayes have it. I'd like to call on the chairman of the Real Estate Committee, Councilmember Chair Sheed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Real Estate Committee met yesterday afternoon at 2 o'clock. We had several items on our agenda of high importance. The first item dealt with an amendment to this property known as the Village Green, which is part of the we call the Long Savannah project. It's actually not part of Long Savannah, but it's part of that overall project. Sterling was available, who gave us a rundown of this amendment. The highlights of this is that the current agreement had expired and that this agreement would be extended until March 1st of 2025. One of the major issues that were addressed with this was the reduction of property allocated for the city to exercise an option to purchase, dropped from 25 acres to 15 acres in order to help the developer construct a 17.5 acre stormwater retention pond on the property. The city would have within 3 years to exercise that option to purchase. Sterling, if you are available, you may just want to fill in the gaps that I mentioned on that. Let me also state, before I totally turn this over to Sterling, I made it known to the committee yesterday. I'll make it known to the committee of a whole of Ways and Means that my wife represented the developer of this project on a totally unrelated matter, not dealing with anything dealing with the city, but something dealing with stormwater, dealing with other issues unassociated with this development or with something with the city. I offered to recuse myself if someone thought that was a conflict. I did consult with an ethics expert before deciding whether or not I needed to recuse myself. My expert advised me that there was no conflict because there's no business with the city, and I did not recuse myself from that. The vote was 3-2 to move this forward to the Ways and Means Committee after a very spirited discussion, including Councilmember Kevin Shealy joined in and participated in that discussion as well, even though he's not a member of the committee. So with that being said, as a background, Sterling, could you fill in the gaps for me, please, as to what I just mentioned as item A?
Yes, sir. One thing I just wanted to clarify is that the extension would be from August 1st of 2020 to August 1st of 2025. So it is for another 5 years. The property that is subject to this
Sterling, I think
agreement. Give some feedback.
Yes, I think we might have some problems with your audio on your end.
Sterling, you might turn off your video and just use audio right now. It might work.
Okay, I'll give that a try. Thank you. Okay, can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The property that is subject to this development agreement includes 299 gross acres of land in West Ashley, and it is owned by the Hip family. It is part of the Church Creek TIF that was created a few years ago. The original development agreement was executed in 2015, and it was only for 5 years. So this is the renewal. And we have been negotiating in good faith for a better part of a year now to come up with some terms that, both parties could agree upon, in addition to the 5-year extension. If you'd like, I could show the plan map again, or does everybody have a good sense of where this is located?
I don't see any other questions with that, Sterling, unless somebody wants to see the map.
Okay, so I'll just keep going. So in addition to extending for 5 more years, the First Amendment will clarify that the development of the property will be subject to the city's current stormwater regulations in effect at the time of submission of a complete construction activity application. And this will apply to each phase of development if the development is done in phases. So that's one thing that we wanted to put in there just to strengthen and clarify our position, that the development will be subject to our current stormwater regulations. In addition to that, the developer has agreed to construct a 17.5-acre stormwater retention pond to serve the property. However, it will be constructed as part of the first phase of development. So this means that in the beginning, this will be an advantage for the city because it will hold excess water from the area and provide a short-term retention solution in the Church Creek Basin. The design and the location of the pond will be subject to the city's design review committee's approval, and the developer will convey recreational easements to the city in and around the pond so that the public can use this as a public space. And so the only other change is related to the parks agreement. So in consideration for the benefits that this 17.5-acre pond will have in the Church Creek Basin area, the city has agreed to contribute 10 of the original 25 reserved acres to contribute toward the pond acreage. So we've agreed to reduce our park reserved acreage from 5 acres down to 15 acres. But in addition to, contributing toward the pond, which will have good benefits for the area, the developer and the owner have also agreed to give us a price reduction for the park acreage so that instead of paying the fair market value, we'll be paying a discounted price, which will be the park use appraised value. So instead of fair market value, it will be based on a park use. The other changes that we made regarding the park property is that we have ensured in the language in the First Amendment that the 15 acres is going to be developable as athletic fields because that's what's really needed in this area. This will be the only in-neighborhood athletic field park space in the area. And so the city is hoping to create some recreational facilities on this 15 acres, which would be similar to the Bees Landing Recreational Complex, which is about 5 to 10 acres, the Jack Adams Tennis Center, which is about 1 acre, or perhaps have a Moultrie playground in there, which is around 4 or 5 acres. So we think that we can get some good active park space squeezed out of that 15 acres that we have now, reserved for the city to purchase. And again, this is an option to purchase. It's not an obligation. And we've made some other minor changes just, as to the conveyance. But Councilmember Shade mentioned that we will have 3 years to purchase within the recording date of the final subdivision plat. And then, all other terms and conditions of the original development agreement will remain in place and remain unchanged. So we're really just talking about the stormwater changes to benefit the area, as well as the parks changes. We are reducing the acreage. However, we feel confident that, we can make some good athletic fields on this space.
Thank you, Sterling, for filling in the gaps for us.
Hey, Peter, this is just a question for you. What would be the city's dollar obligation to this?
I'm sorry, what would be the city's what obligation?
Dollar obligation to this.
So as Sterling pointed out, Mr. Chairman, the the value would be dependent on, I wrote that down. Was it fair market value, Sterling, or was it the value of the of a recreational use?
It
There was a
is
different-
it is the park use. So the original agreement was a requirement for the city to purchase at the fair market value. So the change that we've made is an option to purchase, and we will do an appraisal based on the park use appraised value, and that will be the purchase price. So we don't know for sure what that appraised value will be based on the park use, but we're confident that it will be a discount from the fair market value.
Just trying to get a sense of all this money that we're obligating all over the place, whether or not we're going to have it to pay. That's why I raised the question.
Sure, and we're not, we have an option within 3 years after filing to exercise that or not. And regardless of whether or not we purchase those 15 acres, that 17-acre stormwater retention pond will allow for public amenity. I hate to compare it to something like Colonial Lake, but I think that's probably not there's an easy analysis to the public having access to that area, even if we don't do that. And I would encourage that we would do that, Mr. Chairman, because this area is is in need of recreation facilities. We've got the other, the Beast Ferry Park and the West Ashley facility, but this area is in need of recreational acreage as well. And I think that was sort of the concern that Councilmember Shealy and Councilmember Waring had raised at the meeting yesterday concerning the availability of just raw acreage for recreational use. And I hate to go back to the Plan West Ashley, but the Plan West Ashley talked about this desert of sorts of recreational availability. And so this is it's a good thing. And I think the concern is dropping from 25 to 15 was a question for a lot of folks. Councilmember Griffin has his hand up, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Councilman Griffin.
Yes, sir, I appreciate it. You know, this is in my district, and man, it would absolutely change the overall footprint of this area. You know, this is some of the most important land in all of West Ashley. We can all agree with that. Like Sterling said, this is in the Church Creek TIF. There's a lot of opportunities out there. I listened to the real estate meeting over YouTube today, and I think that there's a lot of really great questions that were being asked. I think that a lot of the members of council would benefit by having an opportunity to maybe meet with the developer one more time before we take a vote. We're going to have a public hearing on this matter in 2 weeks on April 27th. So I would ask council if you can work with me on this, if we can get a deferral from taking a vote of the entire council tonight. Allow me to set up a meeting if any of council would like to go meet with the developer. Let's talk about this thing one more time. Make sure that everybody knows where everybody stands before we take a vote. And then we can take our first vote when we have our public hearing at the next meeting. So I'd make a motion that we defer this. I would hate for us to have a contentious back and forth tonight, and then we have to sit and wait for 2 weeks until we have a public hearing. And I certainly don't want the public to think that we have anything else in the best interest for West Ashley. You know, at the end of the day, we want to do what is going to make West Ashley great. All of us love West Ashley. We know how important this is, and that's why we all care about it. I'm just humbly asking you if you'll work with me and just give us 2 weeks before we take our first vote on this as a full council. Thank you.
I'll second the motion.
Moved and properly seconded that we defer 12A. All in favor, say aye.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Councilmember Shealy has his hand up.
I'm sorry, can't see the whole screen. Councilman Shealy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, it's more than recreational facilities that we're lacking in West Ashley. It's actually athletic facilities, athletic fields, and we don't have access to. We've got kids going to other municipalities to play ball in different places. So, you know, one further question that I think that we can get over this next couple of weeks is, you know, as this study comes back to our Parks and Recreation Department, is where do we put those fields when we know what the exact need is for the study? So it's more than recreation, it's athletic facilities.
I agree with you that the ongoing study should surface a number of areas where there is substantial need. Any more discussion on the deferral motion that's been, if not, all in favor of deferring, say aye.
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 The ayes have it. Chairman?
Item number B, Mr. Chairman, dealt with the allocation of $250,000 to the Friends of the Low Line. This would be, and I think Chip McQueenie is available for us, but this would go towards surveys, environmental reports, construction, that sort of stuff. We had another spirited discussion about that. Councilmember Waring raised some concerns about accounting and also transparency with this project. The money would stay essentially within the city, and it would go through a vetting process with Amy Wharton's office and our legal counsel. That eventually got approved unanimously. And Chip, I know I'm not doing justice to your wonderful presentation yesterday. Anything else that we need to add to this $250,000 approval?
I just wanted to make clear that it's not sort of a $250,000 check that's up to the CFO and Corporation Council, that it's, you know, the City Council approved the concept master plan in December, which sets forth the phase one, you know, improvements. And this is for final design, engineering, and construction budgeting up to $250,000 for those that comply with that phase one portion of the conceptual master plan. So that's sort of the evaluation question. There's also that this is a second addendum to the 2018 agreement, and that has all the language about insurance, environmental, all the things you'd expect to see in an agreement like this. So I just didn't want you to think it's so short that there's no meat to it. It just incorporates the old one. And I know Councilmember Waring had asked about, you know, the larger dollar items and procurement. And I think it's certainly, we're coming up with sort of a document that will inform those decisions and incorporate city procurement policies for those big dollar items that will be down the road. The main concern, I think, from the Friends.
Chip, can I interrupt you? I'm sorry. Can everyone keep their audio on mute when they're not talking? Because I think we're getting a lot of feedback. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah. I think this essentially allows the final design and engineering and those types of items to begin to move forward. And a huge issue, I think, for the folks with the low line when we purchase this is that we're going to cooperate, but they're also fundraising and raising money from private funds. And I think the more that they can do to keep the ball in that sense rolling, the easier it is for them to fundraise. So I would hope, also anticipate that, you know, we have some more private dollars to include in those higher dollar items down the road. This is really a way to keep the ball moving without getting to the large dollar items. The final engineering, and construction are the main two. So,
which would require changes to the existing agreement?
Yes, sir. That they would not be. They can't get any money out of you except $200. They could get up to $250,000 if it satisfies those requirements. If they want any more money, that's up to City Council.
Okay.
They don't get any more. They can come back and ask for more, which people do. But this is capped at 250. They're not getting any more than that under this document.
Oh,
and it's pretty clear.
Yeah, I'm fine with the 250. I'm just trying to think ahead.
Yes, sir.
Who will ultimately be responsible for the development of this project?
You know, so when under the purchase agreement, there was a memorandum of agreement passed, and it was I actually pulled it up and I hadn't looked at it in a while, but it's the MOA in our purchase agreement from the low line was attached is that subsequent to the closing, the parties shall use commercially reasonable efforts to facilitate the development of the low line property into a linear park, with the development to be phased as follows. And I think it's I won't say it's a joint responsibility. Number one, I think it's a time will tell thing. If the low line has better resources than us, then I think they're ready to step in and do that, and would prefer to do that. If they do not, I think this is something the city's going to have to look at taking over. But it's contemplated that the low line would drive this forward. The Friends would continue to drive this forward from the get-go. I mean, that's it. That came with the purchase of the property.
Okay, because and the reason I asked the question is that we have so much expertise on staff in our capital projects and our stormwater, all of which this project will involve. I just don't want us to be reinventing the wheel. I mean, I'm full support of the low line, but I'm also in full support of the capacity of our capital project staff, as well as our stormwater division. And if we're going affordable housing, as well as our housing division, and it's going to involve transportation. I mean, it involves just about every aspect of the city. So I just want to make it clear that, we are going to should be involved intricately, particularly as it relates to the areas that I think at this point we have the best expertise in.
Mr. Chairman, along those lines, I did express yesterday, because Alan Davis was involved in the committee presentation, and I raised that same question that you just raised, which is who's going to take the lead in the development of this, and that we needed to have some kind of master plan with like a checkoff list of certain benchmarks, moving this project along for this, like what you just said, for the city to be in control of this, to use our expertise that we have here. And so I've encouraged them to come back to the real estate committee with something along those lines to come up with an overall scheme of how this is going to be developed and what process is going to be done in as well.
If I can just follow up, just in terms of the cost for this project and what are we obligating ourselves as a city to? I mean, this project could well exceed $50–60 million over time. Are we obligating $60 million toward a project? I see Chip shaking his head no.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Until city council green lights that, there's no more money than right now $250,000. I think there's been about $98,000 expended. I think we've still got environmental costs that'll might be around $100,000. But there's no multi-million-dollar obligation, and
okay.
City council will have plenty of notice. And Andy Gowder has sent me like a 29-page document that sort of lays out those things. And I will say with Alan, he's worked very well with the Friends. It really has been a very collaborative effort. He's been great with that, and I think he can tell you all about that. But it's we were kind of talking internally, and it's almost where you could have a person from each department,
yes,
an employee hired just for this project, because there's so many moving parts to it. And the Friends do a good job of both pushing staff and moving it forward where we don't have that designated that designated person who's being paid just for this project in every department. So it's helpful on both of those levels.
Okay, thank you for your response.
Mr. Chairman, Councilmember Mitchell has his hand up.
Councilman Mitchell. Including Councilmember Waring did at 1.2, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, that's the same question I wanted to ask. The same question that Councilman Gregory asked, and I support the low line also, but I just like to be transparent with all this that's going on, and with the city, using these monies. so far as taxpayers' funds too. And with the low line, I feel that we have expert people working for the city that can do the same thing, that we don't have to really, even the low line don't have to really reinvent the wheel, since we have the people here on staff that can do the same thing. And that's what I was looking at mostly. And I was looking at the $250,000, but I was just hoping that, okay, but the $250,000 they're asking for, how much more they're going to come back and ask for later. And that was my, take on it when this thing first started with the low line, when they first brought it to us years ago. We was talking about this and throwing this around, and I support it, but I just want to make sure that we don't have the city, so to speak, spending all this money in the low line, which is going to, enhance those particular areas, but they are supposed to raise this money themselves and raise a lot of money themselves to get this going. So those are the things I was looking at very seriously about money-wise, when everybody is scrapped for these money too. And I don't know how much, like Councilman Gregory said, if we're going to be 60 million and down the road and they come back and we have to come up with some more money and we're going to vote on it, it might be a different council then. So we don't want to put ourselves in really in a bad shape that way with fund-wise. So this is what I'm looking at too. But we have people on staff, I believe, can do the same thing, that we can be transparent. We'll know exactly what's going on, because they would have to report back to us as a city. So that's what I'm thinking about mostly with this project.
Yes, sir. And I will say we have full ability to get any financial documents related to the project from them on, I forget how many days notice. And I also checked, so when you're an entity that solicits charitable contributions in South Carolina, you have to file paperwork with the Secretary of State as of maybe 10 years ago. And they're certified under that. They're not an exempt organization. And they, last I checked, they kept all their paperwork up to date, and it shows, how much they've expended, on projects, how much operating expenses they incur. They have to file that yearly with the Secretary of State in order to solicit contributions. So they are subject to other transparency requirements than we are. That being said, I don't think anybody has the idea that this would be something where they're completely in control and the city's not involved at all. I think it's every agreement I think we've had involved is mentioned collaboration and cooperation, and not one person taking the ball and running.
Yeah.
For one entity.
Any more discussion? Because
Yes, Councilmember Waring, Councilmember Bell, Councilmember Saccharin, and the mayor, their hands up.
And that order, in that order, please.
Yes, sir.
I'll defer
Waring.
to the mayor. Mayor had the same thing.
We can't hear you, Councilmember Waring.
I said, are we on mute? No. I said, I will defer to the mayor.
Okay, Mayor?
Well, I raised my hand a moment ago because I did want to reply to your question about the design and the expertise of our city folks, which we certainly have. Clearly, however, when we get to this point in a project, we almost always go outside and hire a design firm to get the specific design accomplished, and just like we did with Carl Richardson Park or any other kind of park that we create from scratch. Now that being said, some of the conversation did make me want to reiterate a couple of points I made yesterday, that we wouldn't even be here if not for the Friends of the Low Line, who to date have put more money of their own money into the project than the city has, if you count the credit for the property that we sold to the COG. And our partnership, starting with the first memorandum, led to the concept plan that we all approved unanimously in December. So this just takes the design one step further. To let you know, Jacob, before he left, and Alan Davis has really connected at the hip with this area. We have a whole set of design guidelines in addition to the concept plan to help guide, the design process going forward. And so this effort also gets us closer to where we can get a more definitive pricing so that we can apply for grants and other federal funding that might be available. So I kind of view this effort here, this approval tonight, as kind of an extension of ourselves to help us move the ball on down the field. And it's a very positive thing for our city and our community, and respectfully ask everyone to support it. Thank you.
Councilman Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I voted to support this from this ball forward. So when it comes to supporting the low line, we've got 13 to support the low line. My real question was transparency about the larger amounts to be spent going forward. There is no municipality in the state of South Carolina that has more experience in doing linear parks, in particular adjacent to waterways, than the city of Charleston. There is no capital projects department, municipal anywhere, in the state of South Carolina that has more experience than the city of Charleston. In particular, Spring Fishburne, September Clark being the leading example. When it comes to linear parks, right now we're building one of the biggest linear parks this side of the Mississippi when you look at the low battery wall. Phase 1, at or below budget. We're now in the phase 2, at or below budget, both being on time. To omit that from the process of the low line is a travesty. I am concerned about transparency with this. And if you say why, I've been involved with hearing about the low line prior to this administration coming in. And yeah, the numbers have been moving around. 6 weeks ago at our community development meeting, now I said I'm going to vote for this, but I'm giving you examples why I have questions about transparency. 6 weeks ago at our community development meeting, we were told that we needed $500,000 for this process. Okay, by members of council. 2 weeks after that, we were told they needed $300,000. Today in this document is $250,000. The spending of taxpayers' dollars should not fluctuate like that. We should have more definitive numbers when it comes to knowing. Right now, we're in the middle of Ways and Means. Every 2 weeks, we get a packet with supporting documents for council to review so we can vote intelligently on appropriating other people's money. That's what we're talking about. We're stewards of other people's money. There's too much about the low line of spending money that is not transparent. And I am pleading for more information up front. Should we hold this from going forward? I would tell you no. Let's go forward. Let's go forward with this one. But when it comes to spending millions of dollars going forward, we need to do that in a way that we best know how, through our capital projects department, through our engineering. And when it comes to the template of public-private partnerships, we've done that very successfully too, most notably being the Gilead. And when it came to their money, it wasn't a secret how much money the Gilead Foundation came up with this $71 million. It was clear. Our dollars were clearly set aside, and so was the Gilead Foundation. Right now, we've got a $100 million International African American Museum going on. There is no cloud, if you will, of fogginess, a lack of transparency on the donors' behalf, or where municipal monies came from, state monies came from, county government money came from. I am asking to make this, to build a little better. I want to make it better. And the reason I say that, they've been talking about, what do you call them, coming back. Well, with the infrastructure bill coming forward, the low line has done a lot of good, and I fully acknowledge that. But I think we ought to be going to Washington for alternative transportation money, not only for the low line, but for the Greenway and the Bikeway. All of them are transportation projects. This is the first time any major infrastructure bill has come forward almost since the Eisenhower administration. And we're going to ask for an earmark for the low line? We got 3 alternative transportation efforts that we could do, but for the low line, we're having this conversation right now. So the low line has been accretive to this process. I fully admit that. But we can do it better, and that's what I'm advocating for. I don't want to turn it into a you against us against them. It should be a we. It should be the low line transparent. It should be the greenway going forward, transparent, and it should be the bikeway going forward, transparent. And right now, that's not the case. So I guess I have to be the loud mouth to call it out. I'm gonna vote for this. I'm looking forward to the agreement that our legal team is working on. But my goodness, if it's not going to be transparent, then I guess I have to find every microphone I can, because when we waste money, or should we, not when, because I don't think it happen. Should we waste money, it comes at the direct expense, if we waste taxpayer money, to affordable housing and drainage, because it's coming out of that TIF dollars. That's what that TIF was for. Okay, drainage, infrastructure. And to say that it's a game changer, it's accretive to what's already happening on the peninsula. What we need as a game changer is out there at the Epic. When we went over the TIF presentation, our CFO was, there's virtually no West Ashley TIF. There's not only there's money in this TIF, we've appropriated before, and now we're coming back for a second appropriation. So, but for development that's already taken place in the TIF, we wouldn't have monies that we're talking about potentially appropriating to move forward with the low line going forward. So I appreciate the time, but I'm asking my colleagues, I don't want to be voting on last minute. We should be proactive and transparent for the public to be able to know what's going on with this low line. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Shealy?
No, not me. Go ahead.
Okay. Anyone else? If not, ready for the question. All in favor, say aye.
Doug,
Yes.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Appel had
Ross.
his hand up.
I'm sorry, Ross. I knew there was one more. Okay.
Councilmember Appel.
Appel.
all good.
All right.
Thank you. I'll try to make this brief. We can put all kinds of transparency mechanisms in place here. There's nothing that's preventing us from doing that, and I think we should do that as this project moves forward. But let's, I want to provide sort of a counter perspective to this. When I talk to Jason Kronsberg, and I don't want to put him on the spot right now, but I don't get the sense that he's got like a lot of time on his hands and a lot of like unused capacity around the capital projects department. His department is completely maxed out and completely, they have an enormous amount of stuff on their plate. The city here is being, presented with this incredible vision that can really dramatically improve, transform, enhance this part of the peninsula. We have millions of dollars coming to the table from private sources. We've got a lot of people behind this effort that know what they're doing. And we have the opportunity in a public-private partnership to take a load off of the city's resources to move a project like this forward. This is what infrastructure looks like in the 21st century. The days of putting all the load on city employees, I mean, we already don't do that, as we've talked about. The city farms out this stuff all the time. Of course, our stormwater department's going to be involved in reviewing the plans and lending their expertise. All of our city departments are going to be. But to the extent we can leverage opportunities and efficiencies through the private sector, that is great stuff. Now, that doesn't have to come at the cost of transparency. It won't. But y'all, we need to get excited about the low line and start putting where our money, where our mouth is on this. I mean, this $250,000 is a drop in the bucket, but it's going to signal to the community, to the market, to the people that are investing and eyeing properties along the low line, that the city is serious about this, that the city is not going to just sit around, that we're active and we're ready to get moving on this exciting project. And the benefit of doing that is the TIF that we keep talking about. The low line is the engine for this TIF. The sooner we get going, the sooner we start developing this project, the more capital we have invested into the TIF, the more property assessed value property increases, the more money we have to play with for stormwater, affordable housing, things of that nature. We got to get behind this, guys. All these issues about transparency and things like that, we can solve all that. Chip's not going to let some private entity have their way with the city in terms of the use of money and expenditures. That's what we're going to do with these governance documents and these arrangements that we're going to work out with these folks. But guys, this is a benefit. This is a positive aspect. I wish there was something like this over in West Ashley for the Greenway or for the Bikeway. Councilman Waring, it's hard getting benches out on the Greenway and picnic tables and playgrounds. I mean, we don't have people. I wish there were people from the private sector coming to the table with millions of dollars for the Greenway and the Bikeway, right? We see what happens when it's just up to the city to try to make something happen. We've done great work on the Greenway and the Bikeway, but and the other thing is the more we can shift off the plate of our capital projects department, the low line strain, the more resources and capacity they'll have for us over in West Ashley. So guys, the concerns are valid. We got to make sure we take those into account. But guys, let's get excited about the positive aspects of this. I mean, this is a project, and I say this a lot, but we're fortunate to have it. This is the kind of project and investment that cities around the country die for. I mean, we are so lucky to have this opportunity. Let's push forward and do it in a deliberate, smart way. It's an exciting opportunity for us all.
Mr. Chair.
I see your hand, Councilman Waring, but what I want to do is just
I want to respond to that, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I want to respond to Councilman Appel as well.
Okay.
I agree with just about everything that you just said, Councilman Appel. But I think that where we have, as a city, capacity problems, I agree with you that public-private partnerships is a way that we could go. But I also think that we've got to look at whether or not, based upon all these projects that we're doing, whether or not we need to give our capital projects more staff, okay? Because it may be more cost effective to staff up as opposed to subbing everything out so that we can have permanent capacity. So I agree with you. I agree with just about everything that you've said. And I think that everybody on council is extremely excited about the low line, okay? Just for the record, I am too. But I think that we've got to be very, very careful as a council person. I've been here, I've done this, I've seen a project start very, very low, and all of a sudden, okay, it's millions and millions and millions of dollars. We can just look at the Septima Clark Parkway where we had to find $42 million, okay? So there's a reason for our sensitivity to transparency, because the last thing I want to do is be involved in a project and down the line, somebody says, we need $30 million more to complete it. That's happened. It's happened with the Septima Clark Parkway, and I hate for that to happen again. So I agree with everything you're saying, but I also believe in capacity building, okay? Making sure that the city has the capacity to carry out all of these projects where we can, because it gives us permanent capacity and we're not subbing anything out. Councilman Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Councilman Appel, almost all the way, okay? We're almost there. But when it comes to the low line, people telling us that our capital projects department is overworked, the chairman is right. That's for us to solve that problem, not them, not as a way to give taxpayers dollars without proper documentation. We're about to vote on $250,000 right now. And I'm told you, I'm gonna vote for this. Not one councilman have the documentation on what that's gonna be spent on. And we taking taxpayers' dollars. I don't have anything in this report to say, what is that $250,000 going to be spent on? Now, if some council members have that information, and I don't, and others don't, that's not the way the city of Charleston should do business. When it comes to raising millions, don't when you excited about, when there's excitement in the community about it, when those donors come up with monies, you know what you do? It's announced for all to know, to build momentum for others to join in and be a part of a winner. That's what's happening with the International African American Museum. That's what happened with the Gilliard. As a matter of fact, look at the donor at the tennis center over there. A wonderful family that's putting up $40 million. That wasn't done in secret. When the issue of transparency came up, the next day they stood up and transferred the money into the LLC. That's the way a community steps forward. For example, I think we get, Mr. Mayor, 6 free uses of the Gilliard annually. Why can't we have a fundraiser at the Gilliard for the low line, involving the community? I mean, there are a number of things that we can do, but to use the capital projects workload as a reason to give money to the private sector, that's not the rationale to do that with. In a year's time, the International African American Museum will be done. Believe it or not, in I think it's Councilman Brady's district, maybe yours, well, the Fire Station 11, which has been one of the projects from you know where, will finally be finished. So there are going to be some major projects that's going to be rolling off, Mr. Kronsberg list, in the next year. And you know what? The low line is not going to be finished in the next year. And if he needs more help, that's our job as a council to come up and put that money in the budget so our capital projects department can operate efficiently. So I hear you on that, but it sounds to me, as a matter of fact, the first person I heard that from was Mr. Bradley with the low line, that our people are too busy. That's why the money needs to go to them. So again, we can do better, and I only ask that we do.
Mr. Chairman, I'd call the vote.
Okay. Any more discussion? If not, let's go.
Mr. Chairman, we don't have a motion on the floor.
I so move that we approve item B.
And I'll second that motion.
A second.
That's 12B. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, the other item on our agenda for yesterday's meeting was the unanimous approval toward the annexation of 3819 Savannah Highway in District 5. I'd move for that to be approved as well.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it.
And the last item, Mr. Chairman, was an executive session, and that was deferred for us to go into executive session as a full council following our meeting, as our last item on our meeting for full council regarding the School of Law ongoing issues.
Okay.
That's a full report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Is there anything else to come before the committee?
Did we vote on the annexation?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Yes, we did. Unanimous.
That was unanimous.
Yes. Anything else to come before this committee?
Move that we adjourn.
This meeting is adjourned.